Welcome back, Tweener heads. Welcome back to another special interview today with Bret. Bret works for the Sports Business Journal. He has a lot of good insight into the tennis world, more behind the scenes stuff of what you guys might actually want to know. So I'm very thankful to have him here on our YouTube channel. Thank you, Bret, so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I like talking about this because, I don't think many other people are. It's not a tennis business is not overly covered. So happy to share what I know.
No, I wouldn't say there's like a limited amount of people knowing about it, but no one really talks about it. The amount of knowledge out there is not public like other sports like NBA, NFL. They have all these insiders, and tennis probably has maybe like 2 or 3 maybe that talk about more the business side. So there's a lot of outside looking in perspective, not inside out.
Yeah, could you imagine if tennis had the scrutiny that American college sports had? It would be. There's a lot of subject material there. I promise anybody that wants to get into tennis business that you wouldn't be bored or short of subjects to cover.
I feel like because there's just so much content or tournaments or directors that you have access to, and
and there's kind of conflicts of interest and a lot of it's kind of a small world I'm discovering. A lot of people are involved in a lot of the same stuff, or previously worked somewhere else, or do PR for a bunch of the same tournaments and stuff. So it is this is an aggressive word to use, but it's a little bit incestuous. There's a lot of crossover that probably is one of the reasons the sport I would say that kind of is one of the things that holds tennis back a little bit, especially in the U.S. is there are some entities that really have a lot of an oversized influence for sure.
No, that was actually my follow-up question to that, because I feel like no, because it's true, because how small the tennis world is, and I say this with anyone that I talk to, it's just so small. Even in local communities, everyone knows everyone.
Yeah,
it's because tennis is such a small, I wouldn't say niche, but it's a smaller community than most sports, because you're dealing with the same top players, you're dealing with the same top representatives, or if someone's the director of one thing, they usually run everything. There's no split amount of responsibility when it comes to tennis.
Yeah, in the U.S., I think, I don't know about the rest of the world, but in the U.S., I think you're on to something there, that even the communities, the people that run the local ladder, the rankings ladder or whatever, are going to be, the same people that are going to be at the probably organizing the state, amateur tournament for adults or whatever. It is a really connected community, and in the U.S. it really is niche. So it's a sport that I think a lot of people are interested in and aware of, but the amount of people that dive deep on it is significantly smaller, I would say.
It's very small. So, and how did you necessarily get into this? Because now you work for a Sports Business Journal, you've interviewed the WTA president, you've done a lot of big things. How did you kind of get into this space?
Yeah, thanks. No, this has been a fun year, and honestly, tennis was assigned to me. So I also do general assignment, which is fun. And one thing I like about journalism is I don't think I would ever enjoy a job where I covered. So I live in Charlotte. If I covered the Carolina Panthers and that was all I did, or the New York Giants or the Charlotte Hornets or whatever, I really enjoy general assignment because it's kind of all over the place. I do a lot of stuff that other people don't want to do or don't want to do. I've done some stuff with the World Surf League this year or whatever. Tennis I've really enjoyed because for starters, I like my favorite sport is soccer, and so I really and involve different parts of the world, and so tennis absolutely checks that box. But then also, it's such a weird sport compared to other American sports. It's organized completely differently, and then it's also not homogenous. There's so many entities that are involved, which for the average fan is going to be really confusing and annoying probably, but to me it makes it interesting because there's always some drama. So it is kind of a interesting sport to cover, because it has always got stuff going on, but then also it's got so much potential. I think it's a sport that is just not really tapped into what it could be. And it's still one of the most popular sports in the world because people love to play it. It's such a fun sport, and it's a sport you could play for a long period of your life, like really kind of similar to golf in that regard. So, it's a sport that I think if you were to put yourself in charge of it for like a week or something, like it would be endless possibilities that you could do, and a lot of them would improve the sport. So it's amazing to me that it's in the good state that it's in.
So one of the topics I wanted to talk to you about, you kind of touched on it, is what is tennis really missing to grow its following? Because it's a very broad question, but from your perspective and knowing what you know, it seems like you might have a bigger idea, or a better idea for that matter, of what's the next step that tennis needs to do to become more than just a niche sport.
Yeah. And if we're talking so specifically to the US, but also I would say like generationally, and I wouldn't say I have better ideas, but I could think of some ideas from other sports, especially in the US, that I would borrow from that have proven to be successful, and I think would be with tennis. I mean, for starters, that was thrown season number, which put it there from us, referring to the I think it was a median age or average age of TV tennis viewer in the United States. So that was really a niche, like a very specific part of a survey that was to all tennis fans. I think it's the case at all, though. I think the average age is a lot lower, but said every sport in the world wants to reach younger fans. So his idea is accurate, even if his statistical use is butchered. And so I think, I was really interested in what he did this summer with the different scoring and stuff. I've actually, when I've played hit with my cousin in recent months, we set the timer on our phone and we're just playing points like that, because it was just kind of easier. That. Yeah, it was kind of easier to keep score because we talking to each other, like it's very social for us across the court. And so we would lose track of, like who's served with it, which quarter we're supposed to be in and stuff. And just doing it with the points. I mean, we just went back and forth, and I kind of like that. I thought that was would be a good way to introduce it, like in school or something, like in PE classes. But anyway, so I think you got to make an effort to reach younger people where they are. And so this is why I like a enormous fan of Monfils, because I think he really gets this. Andy Murray probably too. And that's reaching young people where they are. So I think every ATP or WTA tournament should have some sort of Twitch component, whether it's people commentating on matches or doing some sort of interview or playing video games with each other on Twitch. I think that's where young people are. You have to meet them where they are. And tennis is a difficult sport to just dip your toe in and know what's going on, because there is so many events going on at the same time, at different levels, different countries, way different time zones. So it's a little difficult to get in there. So, I mean, the way I would do it would probably be, if I was a Grand Slam, this is something I would really be doing, because those are tentpole type events that people can connect to very quickly. Like, okay, like this is Wimbledon. Like a lot of people know what Wimbledon is.
That's what people know. The four, exactly.
Right.
It's the 4 Grand Slams. To add on to your point, are the pinnacles in what people actually know when it comes to watching tennis. Not like the small 250s that you and I might know, but are like a big significance in the grander scheme of tennis.
Right. And so those are kind of the problem is for the tours is they don't control those, but those are your like entry points to the funnel of fandom, those are the widest, easiest to access. And if I was them, I mean, I would be, if there's a player who's injured or a player who got bounced early or something, I feel like it would be worth it to keep them around, to try to create content like that, which would be easier in a non-pandemic year too. This year, you can see where that was very difficult to do. But I mean, in the future, I even Wimbledon, because Wimbledon is very traditional and stuff, but like they do a lot of cool stuff too with IBM and some forward-thinking things. And there's nothing wrong. Being forward-thinking doesn't erase tradition or eliminate your tradition. I know tennis is a traditional sport. You can have both. Like you don't have to
100%
forsake one for the other. And so Twitch and things like that are something that I would really lean into. I wouldn't change the length of matches necessarily. I
No.
don't know that that's that big of a deal. I mean, I think like I don't know that watching live matches is how a lot of young people are getting into the sport anyway. I think that would be through highlights and things like that. And tennis has in some ways a built-in advantage over sports like baseball or hockey, for example, maybe even American soccer, in that they've got so many young people that are social media natives that are superstars in their sport. I mean, Coco is already a superstar in tennis, even if she hasn't accomplished all that much. I mean, what she's done, and then it's their personalities. Like Osaka's personality is really interesting. Tsitsipas on Twitter cracks me up with his kind of, he's like taking the Greek thing to heart, being this like philosopher, and some of the stuff he writes, you're just like, what the hell are you talking about? But it's kind of funny. It's sort of like his thing,
He's embracing
like yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying he's embracing that young wise person that would be in college that like says something so random in a class that you're just like, what did you just say? Like it made no sense, but to like the teacher it made sense. So it's just like, I'm lost.
It's like the school of McConaughey. That's really what it is. Like he should be like just driving his car, in a commercial.
Yeah, it's like a Lincoln commercial, but for but Greece. What's a Greek vehicle that Tsitsipas could be sponsored by?
Not even sure they have Greek auto manufacturers. But anyway, like he has like a voice on Twitter that's his. Nobody had to like create that for him or whatever. Even Amanda Anisimova earlier in the year signed a deal with Gatorade. They didn't do a press release. Like her Instagram post was how that news got out. And so that is, to me, that was really interesting, that was them. And I asked them about this later, but they were like, that was her way that she kind of wanted to do that. And we were like totally good with her doing that. And so in a way you have like a lot of influencers. So, I mean, to me, they're something that is an asset that really needs to be taken advantage of. I don't know. I'm not going to say I know exactly the best way to do that, but I saw something the other day that LeBron's Instagram followers number is insane. I don't know what it is, but it's many, many millions, like tens of millions.
I think
the
it's
best baseball
27 right now.
Is it the best baseball player? Okay. The best baseball player. Yeah, you can look while we're talking about this. The best baseball player is probably Mike Trout, and he has 1.8 million Instagram followers. So
that's it.
There's some sports where the people aren't as interested as in putting themselves out there. In tennis, to play professional tennis, you have to put yourself out there. I think these people are so much more accustomed and fit for social media because they're already on their own, So I mean, that is something to me that needs to be taken better advantage of by tennis. I don't know exactly the ways to do that, but I think they can promote the game in different ways that can really bring young people into the sport. And that is something that can be done even without the tours. I mean, these people will inadvertently do it themselves. And so that kind of gives me some encouragement as a tennis, somebody watching tennis, that young people are going to pay attention to this stuff. And so I think maybe the tours goals should be to help them grow their followings, because inadvertently that's going to help the tours. And so I just think there's got to be ways to reach young people, and that it has to be the goal. And TV is difficult. It's very complex, especially for tennis, because the rights are, I mean, that whole thing has taken me a long time to learn, and it is really confusing.
So let me pause you right there, because that's before I get into what you're about to talk about, which is the rights and Twitter and the DMCA, stuff like that. I want I think the whole idea that tennis players are their own individuals, their own contracts, their own team, their own everything.
Yeah. Them
building a brand is very essential. And like most people would know, I know I'm going to use him again, but Nick Kyrgios with over 1 million followers on Instagram, he's the 4th or 5th most followed tennis player on the platform. And there's a reason for that, because he has a personality. He's not afraid to show it. tennis for me lacks people like that. Like Sissipas on Twitter has his own voice. Naomi now just released her own Nike line with Comme des Garçons and made her own logo with Nike. She's developing her own brand, and she's now being outspoken on her platform. It's more players need to develop this, especially I think some Europeans that may not speak out as much about certain things, but
Yeah.
it seems like unless you have a personality, you won't get noticed. And in today's day and age where having the most followers on Instagram, having the most subscribers on YouTube, having all of these things really does matter more to the younger generation than actually playing the sport. So for me, it's tennis focuses on, okay, this is how we're going to market these certain people. But if you don't market the younger players quicker, no one's going to know who they are by the time they're going to win their first Grand Slam.
Yeah. No, and I think so kind of where I was going with the TV thing is that I don't think – I think the days of TV being a way to introduce something to new people is for sports is largely over.
Yes.
Because they're not
100%.
on Netflix. So
Yeah.
Netflix, you find stuff on Netflix because you go to that platform. But tennis doesn't really have that platform really. I mean, Tennis Channel kind of, but not really, and definitely not internationally yet. And sports has gotten so carved up, streaming wise, and cable subscriptions are just dropping off a cliff very, very steadily. It's like the slowest fall off a cliff, ever. It's like they have a bungee cord, but again, that bungee cord is going to snap
it's going to cut after after like the third bounce.
And so to me, there's got to be other ways to get people introduced to the sport without TV. And that's, again, in my view, you got to meet people where they are. And so that's Twitch and social media and things like that. And then another one that I didn't get to, but I wanted to mention real fast is I have to say one of the biggest reasons soccer has grown in the United States is the FIFA video game. And that's like unquestioned. I mean, that has been
thank you.
I'm sure scientifically studied because I have close friends that were not soccer people before 2008 or something like that. When we were in college, 2008, I was out of college. 2005, when we started to play FIFA and we're sitting around drinking beers and they're like, after they've played Real Madrid and with all the normal teams, and they start diving in and, they're like, suddenly they're fans of West Ham United or whatever, which is not that small a team, but I mean,
but compared to the Premier League, yeah.
Yeah. It's not your 5-star easy team to pick in FIFA or whatever. And tennis doesn't have that. And you have like, again, the best tennis video game ever has probably been Mario Tennis. And it's a game that introduced it, the longest running for sure. And it's a game that introduced people to the sport, but not the personalities of it or the way that it worked or whatever. And what FIFA has done is not only introduced people to the game and made the game more accessible and understandable, but it introduced them to how European soccer is set up, with the domestic league. And then if you're good enough playing in Europe and things like that, relegation and promotion. It explained these things that are not American and that the average non-soccer fan would not really understand, and so tennis doesn't have that. And so there are a lot of reasons for that, why there's not a tennis video game. And they tried, the reason there's not one is probably a good one. I tried to write something about this earlier this year and all the video game companies just said no comment. So the ones that had already made video games. Yeah. So
because
2K
they don't care.
had done one. Well, not even that. It's that they don't want to burn the bridges in case there is one in the future, I would guess. But the likelihood of that seems very low right now. Yeah.
Well, how can you – that's actually very interesting because if you think there's going to be something built there, why hasn't something been there? And to your point about the Mario Tennis, why wouldn't you, like other video games have, when you can buy DLC packs, when you can buy extra things to add on to the game, why wouldn't you add, at least for the ATP or WTA standpoint, bring players in and have them as characters, develop them as a character, so that way kids know who they are when they watch an actual tennis match. Oh, they're in the video game. Oh, they have this power up. Oh, they have this ability. Like, this is what they're known for.
Yeah.
it's just small things in marketing that, like, how do you, like Call of Duty with Curios, or Anisimova with the Theragun. Like, there's so many other opportunities for them to branch out and use their licensing for these players. But will they? In my opinion, I feel like they've been neglecting to move forward in this business environment, I would say.
Yeah, and so the question with the tennis video game is like probably a chicken or egg thing. Like, is the reason they haven't made a game because there's no audience, or is the reason there's no audience is because they haven't made a game? And so,
which one do you think?
That's like the question. I don't know. I think you would have to make a game and probably take a loss on it for a while until it got going.
Okay.
And also, you would need to make a good game, not a shitty game. Like some of the ones that came out in the last few years were not that good. The best run, it sounds like, and I didn't know because I didn't play these, but from what I've read and researched, was like 2008 to like 2012. There were 2 or 3 games that were pretty good.
Virtual Tennis?
Yeah, I think so. One was made by EA Sports. One was made by 2K, I think.
The 2K one.
I don't remember their names.
I remember one that I played probably in 06 for the PlayStation 2, and they had Nel Baldian, Taylor Dent, Tommy Haas. They didn't have Federer. I think they had Federer, but they didn't have Djokovic or Nadal yet. They had Davenport. They had Serena. But that's it. I have Virtua Tennis. What did you think about that tennis video game tournament that they had for all the players that they competed for Madrid? What did you think about that? Because I felt like that could have been done a lot better.
That was terrible. The one that IMG did was way better. Did you see that one?
That was the one with
Mario Tennis?
Mario Tennis, Sharapova, Fritz, Stevie Aoki.
McEnroe was announcing.
Yeah. That was. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to watch it though.
It was goofy, but it was way better. The Madrid one was ridiculous that they were like commentating on it like it was the tournament. I mean, that was just like that's
not supposed to happen. It's a video game.
So silly. Yeah, I mean, that was like, what? No. Like, and half the people had never played the game before.
Exactly. That's what I mean. It's fun. It's like they're experiencing it for the first time, so they'll get frustrated at it while they're playing it, because it's like, yeah, it's like a branded deal, but you'll have fun once it keeps going, and you'll learn to enjoy it. Right. Compared to like some other people that maybe didn't want to play the tournament, like the Madrid one. And I think the last thing I have to say about video games before I move on to the next question is, I'm pissed that Taylor Fritz has not gotten more acknowledgement for being an esports partner for Rogue, and the fact that he is a competitive FIFA player. Like, there's so much there that they could capitalize on, and the fact that the US Open had, what's his name from FaZe Clan? They had one esports player come to the US Open and face off against different people. And I feel like that's just so overlooked. So for me, that's to get generations younger than me that want to play tennis. This is like the way to do it. There's no other way around it.
They may need some younger people like in leadership positions thinking about that type of stuff, because I mean, if you think about the leadership of most of the tennis organizations, I mean, you know, they've been around a minute, and video games are probably the last thing on their mind. I mean, the other thing I would say about video games, and we can move on, but is what you mentioned with the game missing certain people. And so the licensing is, I don't know how that works, and that may be more complicated for tennis. I'm not really sure. So that could be another obstacle.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably with their agents and everything like that.
With it being individuals?
Yeah, it has to be a lot more red tape.
Right, and I know FIFA has, I mean, you can only imagine the amount of rights they have to acquire for FIFA, but it's been so proven as a business success that they'll make the effort. They don't care.
Exactly, and it'll make the players popular as well. The next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, even though I'm really much enjoying this conversation, is the fact that, and I've personally had an issue with this, and you probably can help me understand why, is the fact that tennis media doesn't allow public fan pages, or one thing, if you follow tennis Twitter, closely, I would say. Double Fault 28, one of the best GIF makers, GIF, whatever, makers on the platform that popularizes tennis moments throughout the world, no matter what it is. And the owner of that does such a good job of getting to everyone's requests without asking for anything in return. And yet, someone that gives tournaments free publicity still is being shut down because they don't have the rights to it. Why is it so hard for fan pages and blogs like myself to just repost the ATP, to repost Tennis TV? Why is that so hard for us just to help promote what they're showing?
Yeah, this is a tough one because, I mean, it is their intellectual property, so it is their IP.
Yes.
But I think you were onto something though with the Double Fault 28. I mean, they were doing promotional work for these events, and so instead of shut them down, I feel like there should have been a conversation with them,
Or just hire them.
like, or just hired them. But how can
Yeah.
we work together? Because what you're doing is technically illegal, but like, not in an aggressive way, but like it's you're using our stuff. But you can do that if the person or property gives you permission.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only illegal if they have an issue with it.
Yeah.
Really,
Exactly.
So that's where I think there could have been a defter hand, instead of just throwing out what's the initials again? The tick down request.
The DMCA on
DMCA.
all of their, and I just recently had one because I posted a TikTok video of me making one with Iga Swiatek with her music in it. So thanks.
Right, exactly. So, I get where they're coming from too, but that's the kind of promotion that they're not really doing that much on their own. I mean, I don't think what he does is really that duplicated by the tours. I mean, especially when he does like sort of the goofy ones that aren't just cool shots, but like something odd happens, like a guy hits himself in the groin, or, racket
Like
spikes or stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Just
I mean,
random
they're not doing
opportunities. Exactly.
Right,
and I feel like that's the only way I get to see not just non-match stuff, but just like things that happen at the tournament. No one really hears about it unless they write an article about it, or ESPN or Eurosport get it on camera. If they don't, like, how else can you get it or see it? Because there's no other way you can do it unless you're watching every single match.
It's like the non-clean shaven side of the tours, like the human side that kind of, they don't want you to see anything but like this polished side, just like perfect shots or smile with the trophy or whatever,
but that's tennis in that
I mean, it's any sport. Yeah. Like, the funny stuff. I mean, I used to love NBA inside stuff, like when they would do their blooper reels, and it was like people falling into the crowd trying to save a ball or something. I mean, I guess that's cool, but like, it's pretty funny that like when the guy would come back out of the crowd and you like take a fan's chip or something, like,
no, that's,
I mean, just these like little weird things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think NBA business model and I would say NFL as well, but the NBA with social media is the perfect way it's run, because they have, when you're talking about bloopers, Shaqtin' a Fool is like the perfect example of, they know where their fan base comes from, and they take diehard NBA fans and make it available to everyone to like make it more casual, because that's how I got my dad to watch JaVale McGee miss 4 dunks in a row. That's how I got non-tennis fans to watch tennis. Like, they all know it because of not tennis shots, but random things that happen during a tournament. And I think that's an opportunity that a lot of platforms are missing, especially when it comes to promoting the sport.
Right. That's that's stuff that goes viral too. I mean, and
exactly.
That you don't even, like, few people can really guess like when something's going to go viral. So I mean, the more you put out there,
exactly,
the better.
No, it's true.
And those are things that break through to non-tennis fans. Like, oh, look at this, whatever.
Exactly.
So
another thing I wanted to talk to you about was the ATP and WTA finally working together, in terms of not just recently with the WTA rebranding its logo, which was, I thought, great, rebranding the tournaments to make it similar to the men's side, where people understand the levels of tournaments now. But just from a social media standpoint of Tennis United, I believe it's called, with Vashik Pospisil and Bethany Maddox-Sands, them interviewing different people and just getting, I was about to say NBA, Jesus, ATP and WTA players to talk and have a conversation. Why do you think it took so long, and why do you think they started doing this during the pandemic and it took them this long to do it?
Yeah, I think the number one thing holding back professional tennis is how many cooks are in the kitchen. So you've got so many different entities with different ideas and different goals and different jurisdictions that, I mean, it's really no wonder that they never really worked together before. I mean, in a lot of ways, tennis kind of reminds me of college sports in the US in that it's just sort of a conjumble. I mean, we're seeing that right now, like with how college sports are dealing with the pandemic and the name, image, likeness debate, whether players can make money off of their name.
Which they have-ish.
Right, but there's like 1,000 different opinions, 1,000 different ways to do it. The reality of a player at the University of Kentucky versus, Albany University or whatever are in two different planets. And that tennis is a lot like that. I mean, Djokovic's reality compared to, like some guy that just graduated from college in the US and is pretty good, but is ranked like, 580 or whatever. Their realities are nothing alike.
Exactly.
The tournaments are very similar. I mean, the Winston-Salem Open or the Truist Atlanta Open or the New York Open compared to the Miami Open or Indian Wells or the US Open are not even close. The US Open to Miami Open and Indian Wells are not really that similar.
They're both big, but they're on two different scale levels.
The US Open is just on its own thing,
exactly.
And to even compare that to the Winston-Salem Open, I mean, they're on the same tour, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, they're Winston-Salem Open in Atlanta use temporary stadiums. I mean, so that it's easy to see how difficult this is to get everybody on the same page. And so that's definitely happened with the tours. I think in the past also there was a lot of cultural resistance to collaborating with the women because it would ultimately, I think everybody jumped ahead and would get to the equal pay question, instead of just being like, well, how can we work together to make the sport better? People are going to go right away and say, we're not accepting equal pay, like we're not doing that. Don't even go there. And so what I really like about what happened this year for tennis, and if I was a tennis fan, I would be really encouraged by this, was that they didn't go for the big $1 million question right away, like equal pay. Let's do some easy stuff. And like, I like to call it like low hanging fruit. Let's get some easy wins and start gradually doing it. And we'll work towards this greater goal. And along the way, you can condition people and get them more used to the idea of maybe there should be equal pay. Maybe there shouldn't. I mean, but it's a debate that should be had about money and numbers without emotions and cultural biases and other stuff getting in the way. It should just be make it like a mathematical debate, not a what my country thinks of women kind of thing.
That's interesting, because I think from that, sorry to cut you off, but I think from that perspective, I never thought of it that way. I always thought of just working together in terms of ATP and WTA, even from like a tennis TV perspective, that they went from showing men's and women's tournaments to now just men, and you have to go to the tennis channel for the women. Like
just makes it harder.
It just makes life more difficult for a tennis fan. And now that tennis channel is now going off of YouTube TV, which blows my, excuse my language, fucking mind, because it's just no, but seriously, like why would you take it off the biggest, probably it's going to be the biggest streaming platform for TV, because everyone's going away from cable. So why would you hinder the ability to grow the sport by taking away the only, I think, without tennis TV, the only way people can watch tennis in the US consistently off a streaming platform? That blows my mind.
Yeah. And that's a whole another 2-hour conversation, the YouTube TV thing. I actually just wrote about that the other week, and I have a lot more to learn about that too. But there's a lot going on there that really the tennis tours or whatever are kind of just like innocent bystanders that caught bullets on that one. I mean, that's
Really?
kind of between that's between Sinclair and YouTube TV, which are kind of having this like pissing match.
Really?
Sort of. But I think so back to the working together thing. I think your point is well taken. Like, they're seeing finally, like, let's make it easier for a tennis fan to access the sport. And it's a really difficult sport to access because it is so segmented, so divided up, so cut up. You know, it's not easy to watch. There was some when I was looking up something earlier in the year for something I was writing about Tennis Channel. I think it was Germany has 7 different broadcasters showing tennis. You know, so it's
That's
not
nice.
just
That's very nice. That's very nice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but again, that's like 7 different. Hopefully, you have access to all those. What I'm saying,
Yeah,
is
exactly.
to me, it's complicated. Like, in a way, the U.S. situation is almost better because at least it's all in one place, pretty much now. You know, I mean,
It is.
And while Tennis Channel is not exactly front of most people's mind, you can access the sport like pretty comprehensively if you can get Tennis Channel. However you do that is a big debate and whatever.
Yes, exactly.
But you know, that is rare in the world. I mean, most countries in the world for tennis, you got to be able to access a lot of different stuff. In the UK, you have to have Amazon. You know, you have to have Amazon Prime or whatever. And there's probably plenty of tennis fans that don't have that. So how you do that is a really complicated subject. And again, another 2-hour podcast episode probably. But them working together, I think this year stemmed from, like, they had to. I mean, because there was so much devastation to the tennis calendar that they had to work together like they've never done before, because you're trying to reschedule stuff and figure out what's going on and try to be on the same page. And so that happened this year because of the pandemic. But also, I mean, I think a lot of credit goes to Gaudenzi for this, because this is the idea that he got hired on. Mm-hmm. So he was that 92-page strategic plan thing that I wrote about earlier this year. He got hired on like an 8-page version of that. And essentially it was like, let's bring tennis together to make it easier for fans to access so we can all make more money. I mean, that's the thesis. And when you read it, it's like, yeah, that's a headline. And when you read it, it's like really sounds simple. I mean, you know, if you go into this like as a person that had no understanding of the background of tennis, you know, and how complicated it is and how intertangled it is and how, you know, kind of clannish it is, you know, you would look at this and be like, yeah, this is completely makes sense. You know, this would be like something the NBA can do because all 30 something teams are on the same page. The NFL does stuff like this because everybody is on the same page. You know, Major League Baseball does stuff like this because everybody is on the same page. In tennis, almost nobody's on the same page. And so that's why that's why this has been really difficult to achieve. But I think this year, one of the really, really, really big positives for tennis is that they're going to come away with an idea that this is something we need to do to survive, or else this sport is just going to get shoved further into the corner and become even more and more and more and more of a niche sport, which is not good.
Well, it also, for people that don't necessarily know about this, but the Players Council and Djokovic and Pospisil, their whole relationship with creating their own professional tennis player, PTPA, they created their own players association, their own union, I would say, and them leaving and then them actually possibly going back. I think Djokovic like signed to try to come back into the Players Council.
I think they got like nominated or something.
They got nominated to come back.
Yeah.
So that could screw up a lot because, one, there's no PTPA for the women's tour, and then everyone has their own agenda, which is kind of like in politics where everyone has their own opinion and wants to do what's best for them, and that's what tennis is. because there's no common ground of this is the rules for the players to all like be equal in some way, no matter what your ranking is. But that's not true with the top 10 players.
Yeah, the PTPA is tricky because they haven't put out that much information about what they really want. So
nothing.
I don't
think
want to
they put out nothing.
Yeah, I was being nice.
I'll say it.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far on them because, I'm trying to withhold judgment. But I just, one thing I would say about them is their timing just sucked this year. I mean, and part of that was like unlucky for them. There just was a lot going on. But also, they did control when they announced and like when they kind of, came out. And I just thought that was bad and really is going to hurt them in the long run because they didn't have a lot of their ducks in a row. I mean, they have enormously powerful opposition. You don't have Federer and Nadal on board. Like but
they also
bad.
Well, the cryptic and most vague tweet that I have ever seen from Rafa and Roger was, I think, the best thing to come out of that PTPA announcement when Novak left. So it was, it just became one of those things of he said, she said. And from what I've heard from my sources is that the ATP scrambled to get everyone back into the same room and talk about it. And they had players on a Zoom call, and it was just one of those things where they just want it to be over. And there is a way out of it, but they have to do better at their job, at least from the Players Council perspective for the ATP, to not get rid of the PTPA, but take what they're saying and actually have some substance to it.
Yeah, no, like there's definitely things they can learn from them. And I think, I'm not quite sure like what the PTPA is going to accomplish, like by pulling itself out of the system as opposed to like working within the Players Council to try to change things. And I guess they thought like the Players Council was so like poisoned or ruined that there was nothing they could do. I just was confused by like why they were going to pull themselves out of the structure and then assume that they would be allowed back into the structure by the people that control the structure. That doesn't make a lot of sense, really.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that doesn't make a ton of sense. And then another aspect on the timing was really their issue. If they want more money is, and I sound like I'm against them. I'm not against them. I think like they have some great points, and like they definitely need more help on the player side because I think they're
100%.
working against business people, and so they are probably getting maybe outsmarted, or I don't know if outsmarted is the right word, but like they're going against career business people and they're tennis players, so they probably need more help.
Expertise or like experience in that sense. Yeah,
and I know they're able to pick representatives, but maybe they haven't been picking the best representatives or something. I don't really know, but just the timing is just terrible because tennis really had a bad year, like a rough year. And the where they can get more money is from the Grand Slams. There's not that many tournaments on the ATP and WTA tours that they can really extract more money from. Maybe the thousands, probably can give more money, but really where they can make the most is the Grand Slams. And you're talking about like the US Open going through this incredible effort to put on a tournament that ended up being healthy, completely healthy, while they lost 80% of their revenue. I mean, maybe now is not the time to ask for more money, given what's gone on. Their counter argument to that was like, well, when's a good time? And I get that, okay.
I see that side of it.
But I think we could all agree that the pandemic and the worst financial year in tennis history, maybe, is probably qualifies as
tennis.
A pretty bad time. So
not just tennis, but just all sports. I can see that side of it. I also think that was actually my next question. You actually segued that perfectly. Is how do you think the tournaments this year that were put on during a pandemic went personally? Like you said, the US Open went pretty well. Cincinnati went pretty well. I think the French was a different story in my opinion, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I know it was difficult for the players to be essentially locked up in their rooms, and I get that they make a lot of money and it's a privilege to be able to play, but like that's difficult. I mean, for anybody, I'm sympathetic to that. But I think because of that, the tournaments went pretty well. I mean, you really can't argue with the health and safety of them.
Yeah.
I think at the challenger level, you had some problems there, but that's because there was less resources to
And less
do
money.
what was, yeah, exactly, to do what was done at this higher level. And I think the further we get away from the U.S. Open, like the more impressive that event looks, especially as you see the issues that other sports are having. I mean, the U.S. Open was another really strong piece of evidence for how you play sports in a pandemic, which, hopefully we don't ever need that information again. But I mean, the U.S. Open would be a blueprint for tennis moving forward. Granted, they have like more resources than almost anybody, but it was a blueprint that I think tournaments were able to somewhat copy, and I think the fact they played as many as they did in the second half of the year was really impressive. I mean, the amount of diplomacy that they had to do, different people they were working with, governments, and travel restrictions was just like mind-boggling. I really don't think that the tours get enough credit for what they did, because it is a lot of work. I'm not like blowing smoke to suck up to them or anything. It's a dizzying amount of work. I mean, and the women's season unfortunately kind of petered out a little bit, but I mean, that's
the men's kind of just went strong.
Yeah, the ATP, I give them a lot of credit. They did really well, and to be able to hold the finals was key. But for the women, I think it just got to sort of a point of like, it was like a game of whack-a-mole where everywhere they were trying to hold a tournament, suddenly had a huge outbreak, and I think it was just difficult. And then anytime you're dealing with China, they're going to be able to unilaterally just say, the country's closed, no sports. And so you kind of have to be, that might be something that they've learned from moving forward. I don't know that they'll change and not rely on China as much, but it could be a situation where in the future, maybe those tournaments are spread out a little more, so that if something happened, you don't lose like 2 months of the season, including your finals. But I don't know, they may not change anything because they get a lot of money from China. So, but I mean, I think they should really get a lot of credit for being able to do what they did, because, it was hard enough for sports that are domestic, all in the same country, let alone for one that's playing tournaments in 30 countries with players from, I don't know,
so many other countries,
50 or 60 countries. Yeah,
exactly.
It's incredible what they were able to do, I think. So we'll see.
So I think these are the last two questions I'm going to ask you, because this has been an unbelievable conversation with you, Bret. One, what'd you think of the Benoit pair situation at the U.S. Open? And then after that question, why didn't the tennis make more bubbles inside the U.S. like they did for the NBA to host tournaments? Like at the USTA national campus, they could have held something there for a month. They could have done somewhere in Texas where they don't really believe in it. I mean, but it's true though. Where do you stand on those two things?
The Benoit pair thing, I mean, I don't really have an opinion on that. I honestly probably don't know enough about it to have an opinion. I mean, I think
Fair.
I think it was, some of this felt like people were making it up as they were going, but like everybody has been making it up as they're going this year.
There's no plan.
Everything changes so fast, and like, I
agree.
My wife and I are trying to figure out if we're going to go to New York for Christmas like we do every year, and like that right now is like a really hard decision to make.
Because don't come to the East Coast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a hard decision to make because there's so many factors, and we don't know what it's going to be like in 3 weeks, and so I'm sympathetic to organizers in that case, but also players, because I mean, it's really hard to suddenly get shut down. It sounded like the more difficult situation was the one with Garin and Hugo. What's his last name?
Was it Cuevas?
Might have been. There's the Bolivian guy and the other guy at the US Open.
Galan, Daniel
Hugo
Galan,
Dayan, is that his name?
Oh, Dayan, that's it. Yes, that was a weird situation.
Yeah, that sounded like, and that was a miscommunication, and so part of this is like you have these issues come up that you can't cover everything in a letter to the players before the tournament because you hadn't thought of this or it never happened. The sitting at the same table eating with somebody who had a contact. It's like if
what do
you
you
wrote
do?
out every single one of those situations, I mean, the thing would be 1,000 pages long and nobody's reading it anyway. So, I'm sympathetic to both parties there. That sucked. That was a bad
Fair.
thing, because that was what kind of prompted the PTPA. They thought he got screwed so bad that is what they felt like broke the camel's back or whatever. But and then regarding bubbles, I mean, bubbles are just expensive. They are so inordinately expensive. And then you got to get everybody on the same level as far as what they're willing to accept and stuff. And it's just, that's why I think the US Open one is incredible, but like they lost 80% of their revenue this year, and that's the bulk of the USTA's money. So, I mean, there was no way they'd be able to do another one like that. I mean, in the same year. I mean, next year it's going to be 2021 is going to be really telling for the sport of tennis, because, and really for a lot of businesses, and I would say across the sports industry, a lot of sports properties, and by properties, I mean like teams, leagues, organizations, tournaments, had enough money to make it through this year, or had some sort of plan that they could have 1 year where they either didn't hold their tournament or they had less fans or whatever. Most organizations, I would say almost none, are able to do that 2 years in a row. Like, if they had another US Open that didn't have fans, that would be really brutal for the USTA.
It's going to be
if
bad.
some of these 250s that got canceled didn't play again next year, I mean, that would
might not be able to host it.
Maybe the end of them, because I can promise you that a lot of these 250s are not going to play without fans because they'll lose money. So it's either they're not going to happen, or they're going to have, a level of attendance that can, where they can at least break even or something. It's the
kind of like what World Team Tennis did at the Greenbrier. Which I thought was successful, which I thought personally was
it really worked.
It really did work, especially at a resort where players had freedom to go to a golf course, go somewhere that wasn't just their hotel, which was helpful in the end.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. It was easier for them just to keep them mentally sane while playing for money.
Yeah, it was a cool. The camaraderie and the team spirit was cool too. They're actually talking about doing that, something similar to that again, because they thought it was such a success. But
I'd love that.
That's this year is gonna be tough. I mean, there's just a lot of tournaments that are really on a knife's edge, and they really need fans. And I think if you were in the second half of the season, you'd be feeling better. Hopefully by then a lot of people have been vaccinated, and it's warmer weather, and hopefully we're not in a flare up. But like, if you're in the first half of the season, man, I would just be so nervous that, not to mention tournaments that are getting moved around again because of bigger tournaments. There's just a lot of, you got to like pour one out for these smaller events this coming year, because they're up against it. I mean, there are a lot of factors that are not working in their favor. And another year without a tournament for a lot of these is going to be really bad. It's going to be really bad. Yeah.
I agree. Well, one, I think pour one out is actually hysterical that you use that, because I don't think I've ever heard someone in the tennis world use that phrase. So thank you for using that.
You're welcome.
I think the other thing is the fact that it shows how I shouldn't use the word small, but how delicate the sport of tennis is, because without fans, if you think about it, without fans, tennis doesn't exist. Just like any other sport. But the fact that you need people to show up to then make a profit says something entirely, because you have football teams that are playing here in the US, NFL teams that are playing in the US with no fans, and they're fine. They
still making a lot of money. Yeah.
They're still making a lot of money because of the TV rights.
Right,
but
exactly.
You go to tennis, and it's just like people that are in the top 100 that are playing maybe a 250, 500, and the tournament doesn't make money.
Yeah.
They're screwed. There's no way around it.
Yeah. So if there were like two things that tennis probably took away from this year. I think one would be working together is going to help everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And part of working together is media rights, which is going to be really complicated and take a long time. But when you can sell, this is pretty easy to understand. When you could sell the WTA and ATP rights together, it's more valuable. It's more critical mass. It's better. Like ESPN's or whoever, for example, would say, "Oh, we'll have all of tennis." Like that's more valuable than we'll sell you the ATP 250s. I mean, that's like a weird cut of that pie, So when they can get together and sell it all together, it's going to be much more valuable, and that's going to help them with the second thing that they've learned this year, which is they are way too reliant on in-person revenue, and so that's ticket sales, and then also on-site sponsorship, hospitality stuff. So these companies that host clients at these tournaments to like wine them and dine them is a huge thing in tennis. It's also really big in golf, but most other sports, it's really not a big portion of their revenue pie. So I think growing or getting decreasing the importance of people being in the stands is something that tennis is going to try to do in the future. So a bajillion different ways to do that beyond just media rights. I mean, you can do it in different ways, but I think that's something that this year has shown, they really need to lean on that not as heavily, because it's something that you can't always count on. I mean, especially with a sport like tennis that in the summer, tournaments can be rained out and things like that.
Yeah.
So
it just pushes everything
I think
back.
I think it's just something that in the future they're going to be thinking a lot about to try to wean off of that a little bit. It doesn't go away, but it just becomes a smaller piece that you don't have to rely on as much. Right.
Exactly. So Bret, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This was so insightful. And I think people that listen to this conversation and have made it here towards the end should definitely check out your interview that you did with the new WTA president. Definitely check out your work at thesportsbusinessjournal.com. Is there anything else you would like to shout out, Bret, before we go?
Yeah, on Twitter is where you can find a lot of my stuff. That's at symbol Bret, BRET, JUST 1 T. Bret,
Capital
just
T.
1 T. Yeah.
Capital T.
That's where a lot of my stuff is. Sports Business Journal has a paywall, but I talk about tennis business on there a fair amount. So
all right.
Yeah.
Perfect. So definitely check out Bret. I'll leave a link to those things down in the description below. But thank you guys so much for watching today. Hope everyone stays safe. Wash your hands. Stay 6 feet apart. Wear a mask. Hope everyone has a great day. Thanks so much for watching.